probably wondering, why am I currently at Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam? And if you're not, it's okay, because I'm gonna tell you anyway. Long story short, I haven't been to Vietnam in about 10 plus years. I would give you an exact year frame, but it's just been so long and I can't remember. But before I tell you about my experience in Vietnam, I have to tell you the fucking hell I went through to just even get here. So let's start off with the fact that I had to get up around maybe 2 a.m. to be at the airport by 3 a.m. to catch a plane that was supposed to leave about 5 or 5:30 a.m. I can't quite remember, but let's just get to the point and tell you the fact that that plane didn't exist. That's a great start to my vacation so far. So the plane didn't exist, and the next flight would be around 8 a.m. at a whole different airport. Luckily, we were already there early, so we could just drive to the next airport that was about probably 30 minutes away. I can't quite remember. I was just too frazzled and in tears. So as I waited for this so-called airplane at 8 a.m., it kept delaying until I believe maybe 10 a.m. My next flight was from New York to Japan, and I didn't get to New York until maybe 12-ish, so I already missed my second flight to New York, which I was supposed to leave at 12. We're starting great here. And this is the first time I've traveled alone. Alright? The first time I've ever traveled alone, so I'm scared. And the flight to New York to Japan is about 13, 14 hours, just depending on the pilot, the weather, everything. So I was on that plane alone for 12 to 13 to 14. I can't quite remember. But all I remembered was I was in tears and I wanted to go home. It would also help if I mentioned the fact that I was supposed to meet up with my father and brother at New York to go on the plane to Japan to then take the plane to Vietnam. Luckily, I did make it to Japan to make it in time for the Vietnam flight with my father and brother. So I was very grateful to meet up with them, to at least take this flight with them. But here are some footages of the Japan airport. after a 6-hour flight to get to Vietnam, my uncle picked us up from the airport. And as we landed in Vietnam, I felt this punch of heat, which I haven't felt in forever, just because it was winter where I came from, like maybe 24, 36 hours prior to coming to Vietnam. I was in the winter, and now I'm suddenly in this humid heat. But the other thing that distracted me besides the heat is the amount of people all in this area. The way they're driving is crazy. My uncle would constantly honk on his car, and it's not to like be rude like in America where we sometimes honk to be rude, but people here honk their car to alert people like, hey, I'm right here. It's just really insane how the traffic system works here. And sometimes people don't even obey the lines in the road, like, you know how in America, if it's a solid line, you can't cross it over. But it doesn't matter here. Some people are just gonna cross it over anyway. Absolutely bizarre. After arriving at my uncle's place, we only stayed for about 2 days, and within those 2 days, we just mostly eat. After 2 days with my uncle, he dropped us off at the airport again so then we can go visit my grandma on the countryside. And it was a weird flight because once we landed in the countryside, which was only about like an hour and a half flight, you had to walk off the airplane and walk towards the airport, which was really weird. I should also clarify that my uncle is on my dad's side that we were at in Saigon, and in the countryside is my mom's side. So as we were in the countryside, we only had about 3 full days. The 4th day would be on the airplane, so I'm not gonna count that. Within the 3 days, I was very, very spoiled by their attention, and I am so thankful for everybody still giving me so much love, even though my brother and I have not been in Vietnam for 10 plus amount of years. The first day, my cousins took us out to see the flowers because we were visiting Vietnam during Lunar New Year. After the flowers, we had a bunch of street food, and then later that night we went to go see fireworks and had their little event that they do for Lunar New Year. Again, I don't know much about this event because I haven't been here in forever, but it was very beautiful to watch the fireworks with all of them. The remaining 2 days in the countryside, we spent mostly eating a whole lot, which I'll show you all the yummy things I ate. And we went to 2 temples that I can remember. I don't know what they were called. And we just did some little activities here and there. On the final day, it was very disheartening because I was crying and everything. I took as many pictures as I could with my family before we had to fly off back to Saigon. And during our flight back to Saigon, you can say it wasn't the most happiest times because, first of all, I already missed my entire family back in the countryside, and there was a lot of crying babies on this plane. As my brother and I landed in Saigon, I had about 1 week left to be in Vietnam, so we just spent most of the time doing the same thing as usual, eating and exploring Saigon until I had to leave. I would put this all in order, but I honestly, everything just became a blur this entire week. I was just sad because I was missing my cousins back in the countryside and my family in the countryside. And then I was also sad just to think about that I'm also leaving my family here in Saigon. It was just a blur. So I hope you enjoy what I'm going to show you. It was finally time to go back home to America as I have to wrap up my vacation in Vietnam. We went to the airport and it was very chaotic in a way because during the time that I was in Vietnam, it was like the beginning-ish of the coronavirus. So there was a lot of precautions going around at airports and a lot of people wearing face masks and everything. It was a pretty hectic time to be traveling and I was very nervous. Besides the fact with the whole coronavirus going on, something was going on with my plane ticket. So I made it safely to Vietnam to Japan, and I made it safely back to Japan to New York. But the issue was my flight New York to where I live. It didn't make, the plane was gone. The plane already left as I was mid-flight from Japan to New York. So The situation came down to the fact that I would have to wait the next morning or so. I assumed the lady told me the next flight wouldn't be till the next day, and at that point I was already crying. I was on the phone with Tyler. He hurried up and got in my car so that he could come drive to New York, which was about 5 hours. Insane MVP boyfriend. But during the time, luckily I had 2 friends in New York that noticed the situation. Thank God they noticed the situation, and they actually came and rescued me from the airport, and we just spent some time together until Tyler could make it to the new landmark we decided was New Jersey, so that way Tyler wouldn't have to like fight through New York to come get me. It saved him 30 minutes, but it's alright. I felt like everything happened for a reason. It was hell being on an airplane for so long, and it was hell having to deal with the situation where like my plane decided to leave early. My plane home decided to leave early than scheduled, so they couldn't do anything about my ticket besides give me a ticket for the next morning. And no thank you. I already had the expectations of being home that night because I landed in New York around 6. My flight back home would have been at 9, and I would have been at home around like 11. That didn't happen, obviously, but I just want to thank my friends Burson and Luis for rescuing me from the airport, and I want to thank Tyler for driving so far away to come get me to just make sure that I will stop crying. But I think the moral of this whole vacation situation made me realize I hate planes, especially if I did not book the flights myself. The beginning of the trip was chaotic, the end of the trip was chaotic, but I felt like everything happened for a reason. I got extra time with the ones I loved. Like in the very beginning, I had extra time with Tyler, and then in the end, I actually got to meet up with Luis in person that I haven't seen in probably 2 to 3 years. So I feel like things were made to be like this for a reason. Besides the chaoticness of my travels, I really miss my family back in Vietnam. It's not even a week since I left at the time that I'm recording this audio, and I already miss them like crazy. I really regret not seeing them or visiting them sooner than however long I've now returned. Hopefully my next visit to Vietnam will be better, hopefully longer, and hopefully there's no crisis happening during the time that I am there. But I just want to thank you if you're watching this, my family back in Vietnam. If you guys are watching this, I know you don't understand me because I can't speak Vietnamese, but I really hope you can hear from the tone of my voice that I do miss you guys, and that I love you very much, and that I appreciate the attention and everything you guys have provided for me to make sure that I enjoyed my stay in Vietnam. Thank you, I love you, and I hope to see you guys soon.